Bam, we're live. Nice, Maris. Shabbat shalom. Hey, wow, this is the quietest chat I've ever seen in the morning. Very quiet. We are hunting webbits. Good to see you guys. Last night, I tried to pull off John Young and I. John was nice enough to come on late night, very late night for him, and we tried to pull off a show talking about a semifinal that people in Europe could go to and punch their ticket to the games. And what ended up happening was it sounds like a bunch of the people we talked about aren't even there. Not only are they not even there, but they didn't even have a chance to punch their ticket to the games. I honestly have no idea what's going on. I mean, to be honest with you, I had fun hanging out with you guys who watched the show, and I enjoyed hanging out with John, of course. It's fun to see him yawn and have a late night snack and hear his knowledge on the guys. But someone was telling me that the stream had like 800 live viewers. And that's the I guess that's the interest. Neither good nor bad, but I guess that's the interest.
Hi.
I'm gonna take a stab at it. Binyomin.
What's up?
Did I say it right?
Yeah.
Oh, good morning.
Morning.
You have the same pattern. Oh, the bottom of my glasses are the same patterns of yours. Rabbi Binyomin, do people call you Rabbi?
Yeah.
I could call you that?
Yeah.
Oh.
You can call me Binyomin. Just call me Binyomin.
Binyomin, that's better?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Can you tell me good morning, by the way, and thanks for doing this, and thanks for all your posts on Instagram. It's very I appreciate it. I think it's very brave, and I think it's a voice that needs to be heard.
Thank you.
You're very soft-spoken, huh?
What?
You're very soft-spoken, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell me what a rabbi is?
Well, a rabbi is ordained. We study certain sections of Jewish law, and then we get ordained by a rabbi. So I done that when I was 20. Where I come from, the Chabad community, everyone at that age becomes ordained as a rabbi. Basically, we all study and we get tested. I was ordained, among others, by the previous chief rabbi of Israel, Rabbi Lau, and that's what we do.
And when you say, and I'm going to mess a lot of this up. Feel free to correct me. When you say you you studied and you were ordained in Jewish law, what is Jewish law?
So basically, Jewish law is basically the code of Jewish law, which goes into Jews don't mix milk and meat, for example. That's very, very complicated laws. But about kosher, not kosher animals, and it's mainly pertaining to the dietary laws, and then there's also money laws, and then different ways of conduct. But the vast majority of it is basically about kosher food. Basically,
And
how to have a kosher kitchen, and what are the laws, which for one way or another, for me, I'm not going to go into my personal life, but having that came in very handy with what I actually do on a day-to-day basis. But I don't want to talk too much about it. Anyway.
and Binyomin, where did these laws come from? These Jewish laws and the ones around diet and money.
So they were. I mean, they were derived originally from the written Torah, which was given to Moses, and then there was a whole chain of command to come down to the Mishnah, which was written a couple of thousand years ago in the time of the Second Temple. And then there was the Talmud, which is the discussion which happened later, about the laws, and then eventually it was compiled into a code of Jewish law. So we have it all clearly mapped out. And there's a few things before that, but So we basically have to be fluent in the laws. Basically, it's technical things. If a drop of milk spills into a pot of meat, or how to keep food warm on Shabbat, or how to make a cup of tea on Shabbat, or whatever it is. What happens if your wife is in the kitchen and then your kid throws cheese into the pot, the pot which is cooking a beef stew.
Spanking.
Etc. etc. Or what happens if you want to take some hot water on Shabbat? So we cover our stove with a blech, which is a metal sheet on Shabbat, because you're not allowed to cook anything on Shabbat. So what if you have your hot water on it and you want to take for tea? How to do it, and do you pour the water into the tea bag directly, or do you put the tea bag in after? Or how does it work with the sugar? It's very, very technical, even to putting some dumplings in your soup. How hot is the soup, on Shabbat? Will you be cooking the dumplings, or the noodles? It's Judaism. Judaism is extremely complex, and there are a lot of laws, and it goes down to every aspect of a religious Jew's life. There are laws: how we put on our shoes, how we put on our socks, how we cut our nails, how we get dressed, etc., etc. So, getting that ordination at 20 is a requirement in the Chabad community, basically. And so we all do it, and then and this way we know the laws. Obviously, if we have a question, we consult with a bigger rabbi, a real, someone who practices. There's different levels, but it's good to know these things in the kitchen. You don't always have to call someone, because And as I said, I don't want to go into too much what I do on a day-to-day basis, but I am in that field, and it comes in very handy that I am fluent in the laws, because I deal with this on a day-to-day basis. And that's what being a rabbi is. That's basically what it is. From an Orthodox point of view, it's being ordained with those laws, and being fluent in them.
What's the name of this community? Did you say Horat?
Chabad.
Chabad.
Yeah.
Chabad. Is that in the USA?
Correct. Well, we're all over the world, but the center is here in the USA, and
Binyomin, what is the so God gave these rules to Moses, and then these rules were organized, and what is the function of the rules? What for the outcome? To obey God, or is it for health, or is it for a ritual, or is it out of respect? What is the function of them, or the outcome of them?
well, God created the world, and God created man, and God, eventually, chose the Jewish people, which were the children of Yaakov, Jacob, who was also called Israel. When God took us out of Egypt after, we were enslaved in Egypt, and God took us out, God offered the Torah, which is the book of Jewish law, to all the nations of the world, and nobody accepted it. But the Jewish people accepted it, and God gave it to us as a way to conduct ourselves. And we have kept it through thousands of years, throughout the Spanish Inquisition, the pogroms, the Crusades, the Holocaust, and today, religious Jewish people have died for their faith, and today we also live for our faith, and we have lived and died by this book, and we continue to do so, and to teach our children, and yeah. I mean, there were times where we were persecuted for it by the Greeks, the Romans, the Christians, the Nazis. Today it's the radical Muslims. There's persecution of the Jewish religion, and there's persecution of the Jewish people. Sometimes it was the religion that was persecuted. For example, the Greeks, they had no problem with Jews as long as we were too religious. The communists in Russia, had no problem with Jews being Jews, but it didn't want Jews to be religious Jews. Then you have a much deeper level of anti-Semitism, which was Hitler, who wanted to kill every Jew, even if they converted to Christianity, even if they didn't believe in Judaism. It was about the Jewish body, not just about kind of the soul, which is the religion. And I believe
Like he was against the bloodline. Like if someone
bloodline,
were against like Ethiopians, hey, let's get rid of all the Ethiopians, like that.
right, right,
Wow.
against bloodline. Which actually, preceding Hitler, we had Haman, if you know Purim. We had, in Persia back in the day, we had someone also who got up and wanted to kill all the Jewish people, not just the religion. And obviously, when the Jews came out of Egypt, you had Amalek, in the desert, who also came to kill the Jewish people. And that is, in my opinion, perhaps the most dangerous version of anti-Semitism, where you don't just want to strip us of our religion, or like the communists wanted to, but you want to strip us of our actual being. You don't want Jews to exist. And, I believe that is the worst. And that is the anti-Semitism that we're seeing today in the world today, with the pro-Palestinian movement and the radical Islamist movement that want to actually annihilate the Jewish people. They want
Yeah,
to wipe us out.
it's interesting. I never thought of that distinction, but it's really important. Wanting to change a group's mind or wipe out their beliefs, as opposed to just wipe them out for their
Right.
bloodline.
Right.
Uh,
Well,
Um,
ultimately, it's the same thing, because if you take away the Jewish religion, then you're just left mainly with people that don't actually have anything Jewish about them, and they will all marry into non-Jews, and within a few generations there will be no Jews. But it's a slower process of destroying the Jewish people, but less brutal in the short term. Actually, easier to deal with in the short term, because a lot of Jews in Spain became Marranos, but they pretended not to be Jewish, or in Russia, a lot of Jews would pretend not to be Jewish. Now, I'm going to come to my sect, which is Chabad, Lubavitch, where we originate in Russia, where actually we would, risk our lives even to have a beard. We did not hide our Judaism. There were Jews that were killed just for having a beard, just for wearing the kippah. Um, and certain Jews would hide it all and only keep it at home. For example, a lot of Jews in Germany, where my grandparents come from, would not show any outward Judaism in Germany in the streets. Not that it helped them in the long run, because it didn't make a difference. The Nazis still came for them. But in Spain also, Jews would hide the Judaism and pretend to be Christians outwardly. But there was, but ultimately they were rooted out and killed, also. But
what's the origin of all of this hate? What's the deal? Like I know some people don't like the way people look, right? Like a black person can't hide their blackness. If someone doesn't like you because you're black, like they can just be like, "Hey, I'm going to come after you." What's the deal? What are the origins of the hate? I grew up in California, in Northern California. There was no such thing around. It wasn't in my consciousness, right? Anti-Semitism.
right.
My dad was married to a Jewish woman. My stepmom, and I would hear stories, but I would never witness any of it, right? It
Well,
wasn't even on the radar of the group that I hung out with, right?
right. So I believe, so there's two answers. One answer is, what it says in Jewish tradition was that God chose the Jewish people. God gave us the Torah, which is our book of laws. God kind of made us, a little bit different, and then people hated us for that, which ties into the second reason, which is people always kind of hate someone who's different. Like in school, there was like the clique, and then you had a kid who's a little weird, a little weird, and then like you picked on him as a kid. A lot of times the child maybe from a poor family in a more wealthier school, just he was weird, he's different. Any majority will pick on a minority. So Jews were kind of a minority everywhere. Like in Poland, in Germany, there was the regular Germans and Polish Christians, whatever, regular people. And then there was the Jews. The Jews were the first minority to enter other countries. the African Americans, were in Africa. The Muslims were, let's say, in the East. The Jews were really the only people that kind of were in other countries besides the land of Israel, which is our traditional ancestral homeland. Because, when the Romans destroyed the Jewish temple,
Stand by. He must have got a call. He'll be back.
Am I
And you're
back?
back. Yep, you're
I'm
back.
Yeah.
Yep.
When the Romans, I can't see myself. When the Romans, I can't see myself.
Spin your phone in a 360 slowly, and you might pop back up. Maybe if
No. Oh yeah. When the Romans expelled the Jewish people from the land of Israel, they exiled us. When we were dispersed all over the world, mainly in Europe, and so we were really the first different people to enter, and that's where anti-Semitism really took shape. Even though the Jewish people, everyone always wanted to destroy the Jewish people. When Jacob had 12 kids, they wanted to destroy him. When we went to Egypt, they enslaved the Jewish people. In Egypt, they took the Jewish people and enslaved them. And when we came out of Egypt in the desert, there were always nations came to kill us. Anti-Semitism, goes so far back. And then, but once we were exiled really from our land and mainly to Europe and some of the Arab countries, we were different. In the Arab countries, they charge the Jews a tax for not being Muslim. So, any non-Muslim living in a Muslim country, like even Dubai and UAE, has to pay a tax. Now they call it a service fee, but it's a tax. If you're not a Muslim, you pay a tax. So we had to do that. If you don't pay, they kill you. So that happened many times throughout history to Jewish people, that they didn't pay the tax, and then they were persecuted deeper. In Europe, again, we were different. We're different. So we were persecuted for being different.
So what I'm hearing is there was a different, and then there was some resentment for being God's teacher's pet, God's
Right. So
teacher's
the
pet in a way.
Christians persecuted us because they believed that Christianity was the new, and we have the Old Testament, which is the Jewish, and then the New Testament is Christianity. So Christians believe that they have to get rid of the Old Testament, and everyone has to be Christian. So they persecuted Jews for thousands of years because we weren't Christians. The same thing with the Muslims; they persecuted Jews because we weren't Muslims. Jews don't persecute anybody for not being Jewish. In fact, when someone wants to become Jewish, we push them away. We say, no, we don't want. You push away a convert. You don't want them to come. You push away 3 times, and only if they're serious do you then start to work with them. But we don't look to impose our religious beliefs on anyone else. We just would prefer if people just left us alone to do our thing. But other religions, so the Christians done it, and the Muslims are doing it today. Just trying to take over, trying to make everyone believe what they believe, which is very difficult. So I guess that's why anti-Semitism was so strong.
It is interesting that the Jews don't do that. You have the Mormons out, trying to get people onto their team. You have obviously the Muslims trying to get people onto their team, the Christians trying to get people onto their team, and the Jews aren't doing that.
Right. Yeah. We don't do that. We keep to ourselves. We do go out to find Jews and help them with their Judaism and bring them back to Judaism, but we don't really go out to seek to look to get converts. It's just that's the way we are.
Binyomin, don't laugh when I tell you this. So I've been watching The Chosen, right? And so that's my a significant part of my Jesus understanding. My understanding is that there were a lot of Jews, that Jesus was one of the Jews. He came with a new message from God. And how did it split at that point? Did any of the Jews end up following him
Well,
or go towards the New Testament? Why wasn't what was the part that made the Old Testament following Jews be like, "Hey, hi, how are you? You're Jewish, but we don't see you." Why didn't they move forward? Why isn't Christianity just an evolution, the next message of Judaism? Like where did the cohort that you're a part of not buy that, hey, this was the next step? If I'm mischaracterizing it, please on fix it.
well, God gives Jewish people the Torah, which is our book of laws, and we have our leaders. We had Moses, and we had a whole chain of command, and till today, the leaders of the Jewish people, the grand rabbi, the leaders, and Jesus was a Jew. He, for whatever reason, went in his own direction. From what I have learned, um, he was pushed away for various reasons. He actually he tried to come back, and it's a complicated story. But he ultimately went in his own way. Um, and in Judaism, nobody can come along and change Judaism. You cannot reform Judaism. You have obviously the reform movement within Judaism that is the same thing. They said, "Oh, the old ways don't work anymore." That started really in Germany, a couple hundred years ago, with the Reform Judaism. Similarly to Christianity, which is an offshoot of Judaism, where we say, "Oh, we're changing it all." We can't. We have our tradition, and it's unchangeable. So, whether it's the Reform, whether it's Christianity, you can't come and change Judaism. Also, Christianity believes that the only way to God is through Jesus. Only through him can you come to God. Obviously, Judaism doesn't believe that. Judaism believes that every Jew has a direct connection with God. We don't believe in man being, in between, and so therefore it was shunned upon. The apostles were Jewish, so he had a huge Jewish following. The Second Testament, New Testament was the Bible, whatever. The New Testament was written by Jews. All these Paul and all these apostles, they were all Jewish. So he had a huge following that went with him.
Oh, Binyomin, you froze for a second. I think your connection got bad.
But what happened now?
You just froze. You're back. So he had this. He was Jewish. Let me ask you this. Let me see if this is a comparison. And I might mischaracterize this too. So bear with me here. The Christians I know think the Mormons are batshit crazy, and that Joseph Smith was not correct, right? Like I guess Joseph Smith, the Mormon guy, came here and he found some more rules, but from God, and then now there's Mormons. If I understand correctly, he's got a new book. Is that the same way? Could you think, okay, the Jews were like, hey, this is just basically the Joseph Smith of that era. They just think that maybe this guy's batshit crazy.
I mean, as I said, we have our tradition, and nobody can change it, and that's it. So that's it. Judaism has stood the test of time. Talking about thousands of years, we've gone through persecution after persecution, and we're still here today, going strong and religious and everything. It's really a religion that has stood the test of time. No other religion has been persecuted as much as the Jewish people. No other people has been persecuted as much as the Jews. And yet here we are. After the Holocaust, they built a beautiful state of Israel. We built up in America. We built up in the UK, in Europe. Jews came out of the. We just came yesterday from Yom HaShoah. Jews came out of the ashes of Auschwitz, out of the gas chambers, and the few that survived, including people like my grandparents and who my grandparents were Germans, and all their family were killed, and they survived. And on my mother's side, the same thing, survived. The grandparents survived. And we came and we built families and businesses, and they built up communities and a state of Israel. And Jews never really stayed as refugees and said, okay, you know what, the Holocaust happened. Now we're going to just moan for the next 80 years. No, the Jews went and rebuilt. And it wasn't the first time. It happened after the Crusades. It happened after the Spanish Inquisition. It happened after the exile by the Romans. Jews continuously rebuild themselves, which is a tremendous attribute, a tremendous thing, which some other people unfortunately are lacking it. Some other people will sit and moan forever how the world has done them wrong, and therefore the world owes them something, and whatever. The Jews have rebuilt, which is another reason why there's anti-Semitism. People are jealous. People think, why are these little people so successful? Why are they so powerful? And it is because of our religion. It is because of our Torah. It's because we are taught to have children, to build, to be productive, to choose life, to choose health, to productively work and contribute and make something out of ourselves. This is in our DNA, and this is all from God. This is all the way God has taught us. And this is why even non-religious Jews also have an attitude where, to take on the world and to build something, make something out of themselves. Jewish people became very successful because of this, even though we have been persecuted. So it's really a religion and a people, and you can't really separate the people from the faith because it's intertwined, whether you're religious or not, that have stood the test of time. And therefore, when anyone comes and says, we're changing the religion, thank you, but no thank you.
Right.
You know,
You, so I'm paraphrasing. The only 0.2% of the world is Jewish. It's wild to me when you hear some of these numbers that there's 54 Muslim countries with 1.5 billion Muslims, and there's one Jewish state that welcomes everyone, and there's only 13 million of them, and it's something. I mean, something really doesn't make sense. And you're also, and within that, you're also saying culturally, this religion, these people, the way they think, is a successful, extremely successful and resilient group of people. Why change it? It's been working.
right. If it ain't broke, don't fix.
Yeah.
It-
And the part that started tripping me out, what really started tripping me out is the Sharia law. The fact that in this country, we're free to practice whatever we want. And then you said it, and I think everyone can agree that the Jews are they're leaving people alone, right? You guys are doing your own thing. And there is this group of people out there. And what I'm struggling with is some people are calling them Muslim extremists, but isn't it embedded just in the entire religion of Islam? I don't see the difference, the difference between Muslim and Muslim extremists. Like anytime I'm like, boy, is that just people afraid to say the truth? Like, hey, this thought process, these people are fucking dangerous. It's either you're with us or you're dead.
right. So politically correctly, we call them, radical Islam, radical Muslims. But, if you go on my Instagram page, there's enough content there to speak to this. And I'm in contact with a lot of ex-Muslims and actually a lot of practicing Muslims. Muhammad really did command his people in the Quran, at the end of his life, basically. And I posted this yesterday together with someone called ex-Muslim. It's a very powerful video on my page. To take over the world, to make the whole world submit to Islam. Basically, the Muslims are commanded in their book by their prophet in the name of their God to conquer.
Go ahead. I'm just showing this for anyone who wants to follow you.
To conquer the world. And there are ways of doing it. Don't forget, Islam conquered the East from the natives, which were, I believe, Christians at the time, and Jews. Mecca, Medina were very, very big Jewish communities. Syria was very Christian. Lebanon was very Christian. Iraq, Iran were Christian countries. Islam went. Muhammad, he was a warlord, and he went and he mass murdered Jews and Christians and anyone really, to take over those lands. And he has commanded his people to do the same thing. So that's what jihad. Jihad is a war which has been waged to take over the world. Now, because it's in the Quran and because it's the word of Muhammad, every Muslim, even the most moderate Muslim, if they want to follow their religion, they are commanded to do this. They're also commanded to deceive, to lie. Something called taqiyya, where they, in order to take over, they can go to what they refer to us as the kuffar. The non-Muslim is considered the kuffar, and we are considered less than an animal in their minds. To go to us and deceive us and trick us in order to take us over. So the way I see it, the Muslims are playing good cop, bad cop. You have Iran, which is playing bad cop. and everyone knows that Iran is a terrorist country, and then you have
Part of their charter is to kill all the Jews.
all the Jews and to kill
Yeah.
all the Americans.
Yeah.
They refer to Israel as Little Satan and America as Big Satan. Iran, ISIS, Hamas, Hezbollah, all these terrorist organizations, their charter is not just to annihilate the Jewish people, it is to annihilate the Christians, the LGBTQ community. They also persecute women and other minorities and blacks. And they want to take over the entire world and make the whole world Muslim. And according to the Quran, if when you take over a country, you try to get all the non-Muslims to convert. If they don't convert, they have to pay a tax, which, as I said, even in Dubai today, non-Muslims have to pay a 75% service charge, a tax, even in moderate Dubai. And if not, they're commanded to kill you, basically. So you have the bad cop, then you have the good cop. You have countries like Qatar, who pretend on the one hand to be moderate and peace-loving, but on the other hand, they have sheltered Hamas for years and funded them. They have sheltered the people who planned 9/11 also lived in Qatar and were refugees there and planned 9/11 from Qatar, within Qatar. And they are one of the biggest state sponsors of terrorism in the world. On the other hand, they're also funneling billions of dollars into Harvard and Yale and all these universities to push a woke, left-wing, anti-Jewish, anti-American, anti-West agenda to make I would say, the Palestinian movement a civil rights issue. The reason why they're trying to do that is because it sells well to the woke American, to the Gen Z. But ultimately, it's not about the Palestinians. The pro-Palestinian movement, just like all the other radical Islamist movements, are about taking over the world. And then you have countries like Saudi Arabia and Dubai who play good cop, who pretend to be so peaceful and peace-loving and tolerant, but really, at the end of the day, they're all after the same thing. They're just fighting amongst themselves who is going to run the world, but they all want to take it over. Whether they're coming with a sword, or whether they're coming with money, or whether they're coming with a smile, or with a gun, they're all coming because they are commanded to do so in the Quran. That religion commands them to take over the world. And if they're religious, that's their religion. Now, it doesn't mean all Muslims are busy doing this. I believe a lot of Muslims are just, want to just live and have a family and work and pay their bills and whatever, like every person. But when they go on Friday to the mosque and the imam gets up, and they do here in America, New Jersey, and New York, everywhere, they get up and they speak about destroying the Jews, about destroying America. And I've posted many videos about it, and more that I can't post because it's too graphic or whatever. But there's enough evidence out there today to show that they are working to take down the Western civilization. In Europe, it's just a matter of time. In England, I'm originally from London, UK, as you hear my accent. We saw in the 90s, when I was a kid growing up, in the 2000s, we saw more and more Muslims coming into the country. And today, in Britain, it's a point of no return.
Is it really like that? It is I was hearing that soon I keep seeing that over and over in media that basically the UK's done. They have so many Muslim politicians that it's done.
I was there recently. I have family there, and as I said, I grew up there. And I mean, the mayor of London is a Muslim. The mayor of almost every city is a Muslim. And the left-wing government that is in power now, a lot of the politicians are Muslim. The Minister of Education is a Muslim. They're taking over. They're taking over. I mean, the most popular name is Muhammad. I mean,
Right.
Europe is done for. The resistance is so weak because of the Holocaust, because of the way the world shuns Nazism. So therefore, the radical Muslims are using the same thing that protect the Jews from discrimination to destroy the Jews. They're using all the anti-Semitism laws and anti-discrimination laws that Jewish people fought for after the Holocaust to make sure that the Holocaust does not happen again. The radical Muslims are using those laws to protect their jihad, their radical, in the name of religious tolerance and not persecuting minorities. They're using those laws, and that to protect them in order to do again another Holocaust, in order to again destroy Jews and destroy Christians and destroy homosexuals and et cetera, et cetera. And look at the way they treat women. I mean, there's so many videos of the way they treat their own women and their own daughters, and the way they force marriages on 4-year-olds, and the way they hit their wives. And a woman in an Islamic country under Sharia law has no rights. A husband can beat them to death, and he faces no consequences.
I don't
They
think
have,
people believe you, by the way.
they have no rights.
Do you know what I'm
With,
saying? Like people have so much are struggling to see how true what you're saying is.
well, that's why we post about it, and
Yeah.
we continue to post about it. And the more we post about it, the more we bring awareness. Thank God we live in America, where we have more freedom than any other country in the world to speak about it, even though I'm sure that one day some Democrat will try to take it all away from us, through Qatar's funding. In England, you can go to jail for a Facebook post.
Yeah.
It hasn't come here yet, but that's something that Qatar have worked very hard to make possible. That the world cannot resist. Any voice in England that speaks against it is immediately arrested and shut down. Immediately. So it's done for.
I showed one of my friends this video in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where they were doing Islam prayer over the entire city through loudspeakers. And they were like trying to tell me, isn't that cool? And I said, well, how would you feel if it was Christians doing that? And they were like, no, I wouldn't tolerate that. And this is not an Islamic person. This is a Christian. It's crazy. The tolerance for intolerance is wild.
Right. So to quote, Douglas Murray, in order to preserve our democracy, we always had to give something up. And today we have to give up our tolerance for people that don't tolerate us.
Right.
We have to give up now is our political correctness. Because the biggest weapon of the radical Muslims is our inability to condemn them.
Right.
It's political correctness. Which was, as I said before, the political correctness was created to protect minorities. But now you have a people that are exploiting it to persecute majorities and minorities. They want to take over the world, and they're using our values, our politeness, our humanity. They were using our humanity to destroy our humanity. Because Iran was a very normal country before the Ayatollah took it over. It was a Muslim country, but it was a very normal. It wasn't a church and state were separate. It wasn't a mandatory Muslim country like today, but women were able to walk in bikinis and whatnot. Today they wrap up their women from head to toe, and they abuse them. You take a woman and you wrap them up, and they're not allowed to wear perfume. They're not allowed to wear makeup. And I'm not saying all Muslims are keeping this, but just saying in these extreme countries, they're not allowed to drive. A woman is not allowed to wear red. They're all wearing these black, from head to toe. You've seen the pictures.
And the point isn't that if they did that and they stayed to themselves, but the fact is they're trying to make that the law of the planet.
Right. So yeah, I have no problem with Islam. In a Muslim country, they do whatever they want. Obviously, it's sick when they're abusing women, and it's sick when they're selling sex slaves, and basically they take young girls and young boys from poor countries. I just posted this yesterday, where they take young boys off the streets and basically sell them as sex slaves. And the sex slaves
is that in the Quran too? There's so many.
Yeah.
There's so many stories of Muslim men raping little kids. That's in the Quran too.
I'm not an expert, but it's a practice that goes to the very, very founders of the religion. We're busy doing that, and I'm not going to say more. And it's a common practice within Islam. The sex slaves trade, the raping of boys and girls, and they don't value life. They would blow up their own children. They will sell their own kids. I posted videos of a father who engaged his daughter at 3 days old, and they asked the father. I posted this a while back. What would you do if your daughter grows up and doesn't want to marry the man? He said, "I'll shoot her. I will kill her." And he said, "For us, it's nothing. It's like killing a sparrow. It's like killing a bird." Posted a video the other day of a Muslim parent forcing a 14-year-old girl to marry a 47-year-old man, and she refused. And the way they were abusing her, to force it. They don't value the lives of their own children. How do you expect them to value our lives? If they kidnapped Kafir and Ariel Bibas and they strangled them to death, with their bare hands, they do that to their own children too.
Right.
In Gaza, Hamas puts children in harm's way. They use their children to protect their rockets. Israel uses our rockets to protect our children. The Muslims use their children to protect their rockets. They do not value human life. I posted a video of a Muslim saying, "Our life starts when we die." The 72 virgins, in heaven, or whatever it is, that's where they value martyrdom. The Palestinian Authority pays families of martyrs a monthly salary, for killing Jews. It's the most sick.
Imagine a country next to your. Imagine if Mexico did that. I always try to explain this to people too. Imagine if we knew that if someone came across the border, killed an American, and then went back, that they got a stipend of $300 a month for the rest of their life. If they came and killed another one, they get $600. We would never tolerate that. And yet Israel lives next to a country where that's what their government does. It's the tolerance for things. I mean, there's, and as well as I do, there's 1,000 things like this.
Right. Israel is overly tolerant, to this. People are complaining how Israel shut off Hamas's Gaza electricity. Why is Israel paying for Gaza's electricity in the first place? Why is Israel buying them free electricity, which then Hamas go and charge the population for? All the humanitarian aid Israel sent in, Hamas weren't giving it to the people. They were selling it. They were using it to line their pockets. These are the most sick, disgusting, people. And the world's busy buying into this propaganda because of the Qatar funding, or whoever it is that's funding all the universities and all the social media. They pay influencers to put propaganda online. They pay people to harass our accounts. They pay people to write nasty comments to us and send us death threats and whatever not. They're everywhere, and they're all working together. I recently posted a video of the UAE, which is supposed to be a very tolerant country for Jews, of everyone, even though a Jew was murdered there in cold blood this year, a rabbi. And they're supposed to be very tolerant, but they rolled out the red carpet for the leader of Syria, the same leader of Syria who's butchering Christians, making them go on the floor like dogs and whipping them with sticks and butchering anyone who doesn't subscribe to his perverted version of Islam. Is being butchered in Syria. It's disgusting what's going on over there. And obviously the world is silent because it doesn't involve the Jews. So they can't blame the Jews, so they don't talk about it. And they rolled out the red carpet for him, and it's really sick. It's really sick. The man's a terrorist.
And we have what happened last week, right, in Pakistan. They stumbled upon a group of tourists, and they separated the Hindus and the Muslims and killed all the Hindu tourists.
Oh, just recently, I just posted a video last night of one of the wives of one of the victims, who said they asked the husband to recite the Kalmala. It's a certain Muslim verse. I guess that's how they would show if he's a Muslim or not. And he said, "I don't know the verse. I am a Christian," and they beat him and shot him just because he wasn't a Christian, just because he wasn't a Muslim, just because he's a Christian. The problem is they want to do it here in America too. They want to.
They already have Sweden. The prime minister of Sweden said we've lost control of our country. They have no-go zones in their own country, areas where the government won't go, the police won't go.
And what's going on over there is obviously sex slaves.
That is the Sweden thing.
What's going on with over there is absolutely disgusting. Now, going to Sweden, I mean, my mother's from Denmark, and during the Holocaust, my grandparents were hiding in Sweden. As Danish Jews, all the Danish. My grandfather was involved in this operation to take the Jews over from Denmark to Sweden, and my grandparents and my aunts and uncles, they were in Sweden during the war. And they were protected by the Swedish government, and that rescue operation was made possible by the Danish government. The Scandinavians were so tolerant to the Jewish people. The Danish Jews were spared the Holocaust, and that's why I'm alive today. The same tolerance that they had to protect their Jews has unfortunately allowed Muslims to take over. And now that same tolerance, as I said a few times during this segment, they're using the same tolerance to now destroy these countries. They're using our morality to destroy us. And I don't think people understand how serious of an issue this is. What happened on October 7th, they want to do it in New York, they want to do it in Miami, they want to do it in California, they want to do it in London, they want to do it everywhere. They want to do it everywhere.
I want to answer two questions, and then I want to come back. Feel free to field these questions after I do. Also, Sevon, there's 1.5 billion Muslims who don't want to kill all the Jews. That take shows how uninformed you are. Go talk to a Muslim. Pat, I want to explain something to you. An ant colony has 50,000 ants. Some of them are fucking. Some of them are bringing food down, but they have an army. And each ant in that colony has their job. Of course, the ones that are cutting leaves and bringing them down to the bottom of the colony don't want to fight. Of course, they're not the ones who want to go kill the iguana in the tree. The stuff that you tell yourself, the mind fuckery and games you play with yourself is insane. Here's the thing, dude. We're not talking about the individuals right now. We're talking about the fact if they call themselves Muslim, that means that they follow the Quran, and these things are in there and they're affiliated with it. Oh, so the Nazis that didn't want to kill Jews are cool? Fine. You play that fucking game. I'm fucking not. Avery, religion is the greatest hoax ever propagated on humanity. Avery, here's the thing. That's like saying oxygen is the biggest hoax ever propagated on humanity. Everyone has a religion. The biggest hoax is people casting spells on themselves like that, using bullshit words like religion. You have a religion. Every human being has a religion, whether the same way every human being breathes oxygen. You may not know what your religion is because you don't call CNN or Fox News your religion, but you have one. You have values. There's something in you that drives you. And although because you're unconscious and you don't call it religion, don't think for a fucking second you don't have a religion. You're fucking yourself, Avra, by saying things like that. Man's greatest atrocities come in the name of God. No, man's greatest atrocities come in the name of man. You guys are lying to yourselves who think like this. Define the word religion, and then you can start digging into yourself and realizing you have a religion. Go ahead. I would love to talk about October 7th because some people will be like this. Well, the Jews set it up, and Barack let them come in because he was just looking for an excuse to attack Gaza. For me, let's say that were true. It doesn't matter. Those same people did it. If you can find a cohort of, by the way, do you think that that's completely preposterous?
What?
That the Gazans that these people who came in and killed the Israelis were actually allowed to do it. Israel actually allowed them to do it so that they had the excuse or the catalyst to start a war with Gaza.
It's preposterous.
Okay.
It doesn't even begin to make sense.
Okay.
It's the same idiots that believe that America done 9/11 and all that rubbish. You have everywhere.
But even if it were true, it's those people who did it.
Right. So October 7th was very well orchestrated. A number of years before, Hamas asked Iran for $500 million to destroy Israel, and they were granted that money.
Iran asked who 500 for 5?
Hamas asked Iran for $500 million to destroy Israel, and Iran gave that money to Hamas, $500 million.
What year was that?
2 years before, 2020. Okay. 2020. They were trained in Iran. They were trained by Russia, another major threat to global security. Russia, is part of the whole Iran and all that. You know, they provided them with nuclear capability for nuclear weapons. Putin's game is to destabilize the West and fight America, and he sees Islamic Jihad as a way of doing it. So that's why he's in their corner, very, very strongly in their corner. Anyway, they were trained to take down Israel, and this was very well orchestrated. And there was supposed to be 2 attacks. There was supposed to be one from Hamas and one from Hezbollah a bit later. And actually, the point was to set the borders on fire, and Israel will be fighting 2 simultaneous things. The Hezbollah thing was supposed to be a little bit later. Israel were aware of it, and Israel, neutralized the threat.
With
the
pager incident?
No, way before. There was an attempt to also blow up Israel's nuclear facilities, and destroy Israel that way. Those things were taken care of. Israel were busy dealing with the Hezbollah threat, and they perhaps were not aware of the Hamas threat. It was a decoy. The greater threat of October 7th, Israel neutralized, which was the nuclear facility attack and other stuff. Now, Hezbollah did start shooting rockets and all that, and Israel eventually did take down Hezbollah, with the pages and with destroying Nasrallah, and then ultimately Hezbollah are nothing compared to what they used to be. But let's talk about October 7th. Hamas came into a sovereign country, broke through the border, and went and kidnapped and killed civilians. Not soldiers, not IDF, civilians, babies, women, children. They weren't even sure if they were Israelis or not. The fact that they were in Israel was enough. They killed Muslims, they killed English people, American people, people from Thailand. They didn't go around asking to see, are you Jewish, are you Israeli? When they came into the Nova Festival, they didn't ask for people's religion, people's race, people's nationality. The fact that you were in Israel was enough to be killed. Okay? They targeted every civilian who they could, no matter of their affinities. That is what radical Islam seeks to do. Now, then they kidnapped babies. They beheaded babies. They burnt babies in the ovens. They raped women in the most gruesome manner and then murdered them. They committed on October 7th the most gruesome atrocities that we've seen, since the Holocaust. They literally put Jewish kids, children, and burned them alive in ovens, and I've seen all the evidence.
And made the parents watch after they chopped off the husband's in the female's genitalia.
Yes. I heard an account that they nailed one woman. They were banging nails into her and different objects and raping her, and they really did do the most gruesome. People say it was a military resistance. A military resistance is when you fight soldiers. When you cross the line and you fight civilians in the most gruesome way, there is no excusing that. And rape is not resistance. Beheading and murdering babies is not resistance. And the woke Gen Z, American students on Yale and Harvard and wherever these universities are, Columbia, that are supporting Hamas's actions. American citizens, students in Harvard and Yale are supporting in the Ivy League universities, and professors are supporting Hamas doing this. That is because of obviously Qatar's funding, but that is the most scariest thing today as an American. The fact that I know that there's a generation in my country that believe that I should be dead, that support killing me, killing the Jews, and support destroying America, and support taking down America, is very, very dangerous. Because this generation are the next politicians, they're the next business leaders, they're the next everything. And a lot of them, I think over 50% even, support the destruction of the state of Israel and the destruction of America.
50% where? Just worldwide?
America.
But the 50% of of these people. Okay, gotcha. Of the woke, right? Of this Gen Z. Yes. Yeah, yeah.
They are radicalized on TikTok, which is another weapon, by the Chinese government to destabilize the West. Where all the anti-Israel and anti-West propaganda is allowed, but anything pro-Israel is straight away taken down. Which is why I personally, I had my account suspended, and I opened a new one. I deleted it, but TikTok is another weapon that the pro-Pali and the radical Islamists.
Is this Instagram content of yours not allowed on TikTok?
Yeah, the vast majority of it is not allowed on TikTok.
Wow.
Because TikTok is another weapon in the anti-West arsenal, and that's why the Biden administration, even though a woke administration that does not support Israel whatsoever, and gave money to Iran in order to enable Iran to do. Don't forget, Iran was broke under Trump. Iran was broke. Iran could not have pulled off October 7th under Trump. It was when Biden lifted all the sanctions and all that, then Iran became rich again, and then they were able to do this. But even the Biden administration banned TikTok in America. They realized it's a national security threat. Trump surprisingly let it go. I don't know, because Trump normally is a man of common sense. So I don't understand how he allowed TikTok to continue. But it's a very dangerous place. It's a hotbed of anti-Semitism, more than Instagram, more than any other place. And they're radicalized on social media and by the professors. A lot of college professors support Hamas because of the Qatar funding, which has put the right people for this in power in these universities. This has been going on for years. This didn't happen yesterday. This has been going on for years. How to take down America from within? You start like the Nazis. You start with the colleges. You start with the professors. You start in the education system. And then, it spills out. Same thing in the UK, and in British schools, they're taught about Islam and tolerance to Islam. They're not taught about Judaism or tolerance to Jews.
These countries that are having these crazy issues, Sweden, France, Germany, UK, you don't think at some point someone stands up and is like, all right, fuck this?
So you have, various politicians, like you have the AFD, I believe it is, you have the AFD in Germany. I think it's the AFD, the ADF. I don't know what it's called in Germany. That you have Le Pen in France. You have Geert Wilders in Holland. But these politicians will never make it to power because they're restricted, because they're considered to be racists.
It's mind-boggling to me that the script has been flipped. I think you explained it very well in the beginning of the show, that basically the tolerance and the moral values are now being used against. I mean, that's basically what happened in Europe is the same thing that happened in the United States with the BLM movement, right? If you saw 5 black men raping a woman and you said something, it got so extreme here that you were racist. People were justifying the rape and being like, hey, it's because it's okay, that white woman is privileged and these guys aren't, and we justify them raping them. That same thing has happened. If you say anything about Islam, you're labeled an Islamophobe, and we know liberals are terrified of being labeled as racist, right?
Right. So yeah,
That's the psyop in a nutshell.
Right. So as I said, they've used our morality to destroy us. Islamophobia is another weapon in the radical Islamist arsenal, where they use that to shield themselves and to be able to do all the stuff they want to do to take over the West. Islamophobia is totally nonsense because it's not a phobia. A phobia is something which is a fear of someone, they're scared of ants or they're scared of spiders or they're scared of flying.
Irrational fear.
Irrational.
Yeah.
My mother was scared of going in an airplane, and for my wedding and for my brother's wedding, she made the trip over, from England to America she overcame that fear because she wanted to be by our weddings, and she was able to fly because she wanted to come, but regularly she wouldn't just take a flight to go on vacation somewhere. She said, no, I'm scared of flight. It's an irrational fear, a phobia. There's no phobia when you see Hamas raping women and butchering, beheading babies and burning them in ovens, or you see ISIS burning Christians in cages, like we saw a couple of years ago, the way they behaved, or when you see the attack in Kashmir 2 days ago, where they killed Christians, or you see what's going on in Syria, the way they're persecuting the minorities there. It's not a phobia. It's a very realistic fear that we have. We fear for our safety. We fear for our children. We fear for our country. These Western values that we have in America, they are under threat. Democracy is a new thing. There wasn't always democracy. The vast majority of the time that the world was around, there was not democracy. We are in fear. We are at risk of losing our democracy. When the radical Muslims take over, they strip the democracy. They strip the people of their rights, of their freedoms. It happened with Hitler. It happened in Iran. It happened in every single radical Muslim country. And it can happen in Europe. It can happen in England. It can happen here in America. People don't understand that if you have a generation that believes in the radical Islamist ideology, and those generations are going to be our next policymakers and our next business leaders and our next politicians. And our next parents and our next professors. We are at fear of losing, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but there is a fear of losing our democracy. It can happen. It's happened before. Great empires have fallen, great countries have fallen and gone back into the dark ages. And it can happen again.
It's happened to the Middle East. I was just looking. Besides Israel, there's no democracy in the East or the near Middle East.
The Arabs cannot have a democracy.
So, I want to bring you back to this thing, and I'm not a religious scholar, but isn't it interesting? I was tripping on Jesus the other day. The way my understanding is basically, if he hadn't have come, we wouldn't have had a religious freedom. Like a country like the United States couldn't exist, and we couldn't. He freed people, right? I mean, and I put that in quotes. I don't mean it to be offensive to you, but from the laws of the Torah. Is that right? But you could still practice the laws of the Torah if you wanted to.
I think I don't think Christianity added that, because in Europe, when church and state were intertwined, for example, in Spain, Jews were killed and persecuted by the king, by the police, by the army, in the name of the church. The church was more powerful than the monarch in Spain and Portugal.
And this is AD.
This is Christianity.
Yeah.
At its height, when Jews were being persecuted by the authorities because we're Jewish.
Why did they do that? Under what notion?
Well, Christianity back in those days was kind of like radical Islam today. It was the same thing. Everyone has to be Christian or you die. And those are the facts. There is no disputing. And they done it, and they killed millions and millions of Jews. The Holocaust was only possible because of Christian anti-Semitism for 2,000 years in Europe, where it was in the DNA of the Europeans that we can kill Jews, that Jews are different, that Jews are Christ killers, whatever it is. That was only made possible by Christian anti-Semitism and pogroms and ghettos. That's why Hitler was able to pull it off, because it was already in the DNA. Hitler didn't invent, and the Nazis, they did not invent anti-Semitism. You see, the world teaches the Holocaust wrong. The world teaches that Germany was a very specific country, and the Nazis came along for a few years and messed it all up. The most pogroms were in Poland and Germany for 2,000 years. The most persecution of Jews in Europe was happening already in Germany and in Poland and in Ukraine and in Hungary and in Prague and in all these countries where the Holocaust took place. Jews were persecuted for 2,000 years by the church. Jews were expelled from England also and then let back in. Jews were always persecuted. What Hitler done is he took that already existing anti-Semitism and he mass-produced it. He put it into a factory, and he said, let's do 20,000 a day of them. Let's make gas chambers. Let's really do this. But he couldn't have done it in a moral continent. Europe was not a moral continent. Europe was a continent that killed and butchered Jews for 2,000 years. After the Holocaust, it became unpolite to be anti-Semitic. It became wrong. It was guilt. There was shame. So then Europe stopped doing it. Christianity reformed itself. Today, Christians don't go around killing Jews. Christianity took a major reform after World War II. But then radical Islam picked it up and said, you know what? We'll do it. We'll persecute Jews. We will butcher Jews. We'll persecute Christians. We'll persecute gays. We will now do what the Christians were doing and what the Muslims were doing for thousands of years, because the Muslims also killed millions of Christians and non-believers and Jews forever. They're now doing it. What I think has to happen with Islam is they have to kind of have a reform movement like Christianity, where they have to arrive in the 21st century and say, you know what, that version of Islam cannot work in this day and age. We could still eat halal and go to pray and keep it all, but the part where it says to kill the Jews and kill the Christians and the sex with underage girls and all that has to change.
They're not, if they're as committed to their religion as, let's say, you are, they're not going to do that.
Well, my religion doesn't demand that I do these things.
I agree. But
my
to
religion
them,
was given by the authentic Moses and the authentic God, and it came to better man and to better the world. They have come to destroy. And
they probably think the same thing, though, don't you think, Binyomin?
Well, the facts are that Jews are not going around for the last few thousand years going to countries and persecuting people.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree with you, but they're going to reform as much as someone else who doesn't want to reform wants to reform.
Look, you cannot have a book that says to kill all non-believers.
I agree.
And say that this is an acceptable thing to be sold and taught in America. Any other book that called for killing of minorities is banned. Mein Kampf is not exactly something you can buy in every bookstore here. Nazism is not preached on every street corner. There aren't rallies of Nazis in America waving swastikas and screaming death to the Jews.
You couldn't do what's being done to the Jews if you were doing it to the blacks on universities across the country. I always do that. Whenever I hear any anti-Semitism, I just switch it out for black people. I'm like, oh my God, this would never happen.
I mean, when you say from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, you're not talking about a two-state solution. You're not talking about coexistence. You're not talking about living side by side. You're talking about killing every damn Jew that lives in Israel and in the whole world. As the head of Hezbollah, who's now been killed, said, I want all the Jews to move to Israel so it'll be easier to kill them in one shot. If they're living all over the world, it's difficult. Let's get them all to Israel, and then we can kill them all in one go. And they tried many times. When an American student gets up and says, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, they're calling for the Holocaust, for the killing of 8 million Jews in Israel. That's all they're calling for. They're not calling for human rights for Palestinians, because if they cared about human rights for Palestinians, they would be protesting against Hamas, who are abusing the people of Gaza and killing them and murdering them and taking away their aid. All the humanitarian aid that went into Gaza, Hamas stole. And if a civilian in Gaza wanted to get a bite to eat out of that humanitarian aid, and they went and they took it from Hamas, they were killed. They were killed by Hamas. Yeah. Hamas don't care about the human lives in Gaza. They don't care. They seized power by killing Palestinian people.
I saw the video footage of the trucks driving through the town and then beating anyone who got close to the humanitarian truck.
Right. This humanitarian aid, as Elisha Rabbi, who was a freed hostage, who said in the UN, and I posted on my page, I was actually just messaging him before the show, Elisha Rabbi. He was responding to a message on Instagram. As he said, the trucks came into Gaza, it all went to Hamas. It didn't go to the people that needed it. They were eating it and they were selling it. Bananas in Gaza that came for free were $25, for a thing of bananas, whatever you call it, a bunch of bananas in Gaza that came for free from Israel or the US, truckloads of bananas. Hamas would then sell it to the population for $25. And if you didn't have it, you couldn't get it. And if you couldn't get it, you would starve. And if you tried to steal, you were killed. Those are the people that these civil rights movements are protecting in the name of civil rights, in the name of human rights. This is insane. It's absurd. And they don't say a word about the Jewish women that were murdered and raped. All the human rights organizations don't talk about that. They don't talk about the Syrians, the Christians that are being killed there. They don't talk about what happened now in Kashmir. They don't talk about Boko Haram. They don't talk any time Muslims are killing or persecuting or raping. All the civil rights movements don't say a word.
Hey, how about the fact that people want the Red Cross to go in and help the residents of Gaza, but you never hear them mention, can the Red Cross go in and help the hostages?
So, no, Netanyahu asked the Red Cross to deliver medicine to the hostages, and they refused. They refused. The Red Cross is as complicit as Hamas. So is UNRWA. Under the charter of the UN, they have protected and funded Hamas. I mean, the UN is a disaster. The UN
yeah, it's horrible. But Tank Reeves, you must have missed it earlier in the show. He was also talking about the murdering of Christians.
Many times.
He talked about it extensively. This isn't we've covered a lot of terrain. Frank Reeves, free Palestine. I agree, free Palestine. Why don't we drop a huge bomb on the border of Egypt and Gaza and let everyone run out? Let's set them free. I agree. It's time to let them out. Let them out all through Egypt, and then let Trump build let Trump build something there. I think it's insane, by the way, to let those people stay there.
Right.
I think it's absolutely, as well as I know also, like, I'm Armenian. My family ran here during the genocide in 1915, and they made their way to the United States, and I'm so glad they left. And my wife is Jewish, and her family was able to get out of Germany, and I'm so glad they left. The fact that we're keeping those people caged in there or whatever, the fact that they're not let out through Egypt to run that way. Listen, Israel's already let in 2 million of them. There's 2 million. There are 2 million Arabs living in Israel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not 2 million Jews living in totality in the 54 Muslim countries. They've all been kicked out.
Right. The Palestinians, belong in Egypt and Jordan, wherever,
Why don't they let them out? Why doesn't Egypt just let them all in?
They don't want them.
They don't want them.
They don't want them. They were thrown out of Jordan. They were thrown out of Egypt.
Are they even a real people? Are they? My understanding is 1964, they turned from a nationality to an ethnicity for a psyop. The same way they did to the Mexicans, right? The Mexicans are basically Native Americans who were raped by the Spaniards, and then we gave them Catholicism and call them Mexicans now. Is that what happened in Palestine? Are they? Is it just a psyop? Hey, we've kept you here so long, you've now an ethnicity instead of a nationality?
Yeah, I mean, look, there were Arabs and Jews living, in the land on the British Mandate, Palestine. Obviously, it's a Jewish ancestral homeland. The Jews have lived there for years, and the Jews, had sovereignty over the land for many years. But then there was the partition where they split the land. They gave some to the Arabs, some to the Jews. The Arab part of the partition became Jordan. Jordan is Palestine. Jordan is the Arab section of Palestine. The Arabs didn't like that. They wanted to take the whole thing. So they said, no, we're going to take the Jewish part also. And that's where this whole Palestinian thing comes from. Really, they belong in Jordan or Egypt or wherever it is. The Jewish part of the land should not be theirs. The Palestinian war is basically to get rid of Israel. So the Arabs in 1948 decided, we don't accept this partition. We want to take the whole land. Therefore, they fought a war against the Israelis, against the Jews. It's the day after the war, called the War of Independence. The day after Israel declared independence, the Arab countries all invaded, and they told the Palestinians, the Arab population, there's no such thing as Palestinians. They told the Arab population. My wife's grandparents were born in British Mandate Palestine. They lived there. They saw it all. I've heard from them everything. They lived through it. They fought in the War of Independence. They lived with Arabs in British Mandate Palestine, and they knew exactly how evil they were, and how many stories of how they were always trying to kill the Jews, always trying to undermine the Jews, and the British helped a lot, with that. Anytime the Arabs, would try to kill Jews, the British let it go. They let them do it. There's many stories. They were trying to kill us way before the state of Israel. So anyway, after the petition, instead of the Arabs just taking their part and the Jews taking their part, and everyone just going, building their lands, like they went and decided we're going to wipe out Israel. So they fought a war. The Arab leaders told the Arab population to leave the land of Israel. We're going to destroy the Jews, and you're going to come back. So a lot of them left voluntarily, even though they didn't have to, because they were told to by the Arabs. And now they call it the Nakba. They say the Israelis threw them out. It's not true. They left. My grandfather was there. My grandmother was there. They saw it. They had neighbors that were Arabs that packed their bags and left. They asked them, where are you going? So we were told to leave because first the Arabs are going to destroy the Jews. Then we're going to come back and we're going to take your house. Okay? That's what the Arabs are. They left. The Jews won the war miraculously by the grace of God. Only by the grace of God. And we established our state. Then they tried again in 1967 with the Six-Day War, another miracle, and the Yom Kippur War, another miracle, and they're still trying today to destroy the Jewish state because they want the whole land to be Muslim, to be Arab. So then they realized maybe it's not so popular just to come like that. So they created a civil rights movement called the Palestinians, which was created in the 60s by Yasser Arafat, who hired American PR companies in Manhattan to start to make this happen, funded by Qatar and the Saudis and Iran, whoever it was. Iran was not yet doing this, but
I think Russia was pretty involved in the Yasser Arafat thing.
Russia, as I said earlier, has always taken the Arabs against Israel because they see Israel as America's little toy, little brother, friend, whatever. And Russia will always fight against American interests. So if it's taking Iran against Israel, they're taking Iran against Israel. Same thing with China. China also wanted to destabilize the West. So, they will take the Arabs against the Jews because they see that as a way of destabilizing the West in order for Russia to become the America, or China to become the America. They all want to become the superpower. So they use the Palestinian fight against the Jews as a way of achieving, again, destabilizing the West, etc., etc. I think what people must understand that the Israel-Palestine conflict is the conflict between the West, Western values, Western civilization, and the Dark Ages. It's between good and evil, and it affects every American citizen and every English and every French and anyone. Because if these radical Muslims are allowed to do what they want to do, allowed to take over, then your granddaughter will be wearing from head to toe, a kafir basically.
It's amazing that no one looks at these countries. I like the way you said that. It's the difference between Western civilization and I forget what you called it, but look at these 54 countries. I'll give you. You can choose any of these 54 countries, or you could choose Israel to live in. Not one person's choosing Tehran.
Right.
You know what I mean? No one's choosing. It's wild to me that people don't see it, and then these people are leaving their countries because they're horrible, and then coming to these other countries and trying to spread their horribleness.
So I think they come here or they come to the UK. From the way I see it, perhaps a group of Muslims would leave Iran, come let's say to the UK or to America, and they have children, and the parents, they know how bad it is over there. They just want to have a peaceful life and then perhaps make a few dollars or a few pounds, and then they save up, they work hard, they put their child in Oxford or at Harvard, and they worked hard for that, and the kid comes home and says, I support Hamas. And the parent looks at them, but we left those countries, we came here, we worked hard to put you in Harvard, and you're coming as radical as the people we ran away from. I think the new generation of Muslims are more radical than the parents who came as refugees, uh, running away, you know, from the way I see it, because jihad and globalizing intifada, these are slogans that we're seeing young Muslims and young Americans shout. You don't see it that much with the older community. I might be wrong. Could be they also believe in it. It's possible they do. It's possible that someone that left Iran 40 years ago, now living in America, will also say, "Let's make America Iran," maybe forgetting what they ran away from.
Right, right,
But
right.
I think the next generation, and that's what's scary. Um, there is evidence of mosques here in New Jersey, in Detroit, in Cleveland, and all these places that are preaching to destroy the West, and it goes unchecked. There is no vetting of who can be an imam and who can preach and what they can say. You know, unlike in Judaism, someone gets up and says, "I'm speaking in the name of Judaism, and I'm a rabbi, and I'm calling, for horrible things to happen to people." They'll be shut down in 5 minutes. They will
Right,
be given
right,
illegitimacy.
right,
The Jews will be the first person to take him down.
right.
They won't. And we don't have that. We don't have that. No, we don't. We wouldn't put up with it. Um, you know, these extreme fact. You came back at the beginning. You asked, is it radical Islam or is it mainstream Islam? Unfortunately, it's as we established. It's mainstream. It's mainstream. It's in their book. It's in the Quran. It's something which is part and parcel of their religion, and it's getting worse and worse. Again, people in America don't understand. They don't understand how we can lose our rights here. But if it's happening in Europe, it can happen. It can happen. It can happen here. It can happen. It can happen anywhere. It can really, can really happen anywhere. That we can lose our rights and our civilization again. It's definitely possible.
Binyomin, are you optimistic about the future?
Well, so I'm gonna have to go back to my faith because the Jews survived the most horrible persecution, whether it was the Spanish Inquisition by the Christians, whether it was the Crusades, whether it was the pogroms, whether it was the Holocaust, whether it was the Greeks, whoever it was, the Romans who came. It says in every generation they come to destroy us and God saves us. And all these people I mentioned are gone. The Romans, the Greeks, the Crusaders, the Christians are not pogroming against Jews anymore. Even though Christians are here, but they're here in a very reformed way. And they're not coming after us. In fact, they're supporting us by and large. I think there is a difference between Christians and Catholics, but I'm not getting into that because I don't understand it too much. I think I think the Catholics are more anti-Semitic in a way. The recent Pope was very, very anti-Israel, very, very, very anti-Israel, extremely, lefty in Palestine and very anti-Jewish. As is well documented. But I think that's Catholics. The Nazis are no longer here. Hitler's gone. When a Jew lived in Germany in 1939 and they looked at the Nazis and Hitler, they said, this empire is undefeatable. It's a 1,000-year Reich. How are we going to get out of this? And 6 million Jews and 60 million humans were killed. But ultimately, the Jews are here today after the Holocaust and we're going strong. Only God could take it down. So it's going to need, hopefully something like that to take down this radical Islam. Will it be a war like the World War II, and will it involve the West and the military? And I don't know. Will it just reform itself like Christianity did? I don't know. But one thing I do know, that no one has ever destroyed the Jewish people, and no one will ever destroy the Jewish people. That's the promise that God has made to the Jewish people, and He has kept His word. And I believe the same thing of the West. Hopefully, I believe that something will happen. But we had a comment earlier from someone who said not all Muslims, and When you say, in the face of ISIS, Hamas, Iran, the atrocities that happen now in Kashmir, what's going on in Syria, you say it's not all Muslims. No one said it's all Muslims. But when you say it's not all Muslims, then what you're essentially doing now is saying we don't need to worry about this. We don't need to talk about this. It's just going to work it out on its own. It's just like Obama said when ISIS first started, said it's a handful of old men on a pickup truck. You remember Obama saying that? How much damage did ISIS do? It took till Trump to defeat them, and they're still around today even. When you play down the dangers, maybe people are doing it because they're just in denial, or maybe because they just don't want to face reality. But we have a thing in Judaism: when someone's sick, you go to a doctor, and knowing the illness is half of the cure. You wake up one morning, you have a tremendous amount of pain in your head or in your stomach. Your mind races. Maybe it's cancer. Maybe I have this. Maybe I'm going to die tomorrow. How many times in my life have I woken up with something and I thought, it's the end. You go to the doctor. The doctor said you have a sinus infection. You have this. You have that. Here's your medication. Even before you took the antibiotic, the fact that it's a sinus infection and not a brain tumor, you're already feeling better. Half the time, I don't even take the antibiotic. I don't believe in so much of it. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But a lot of times I've had infections where I left the antibiotic in the closet, and I got better. Sometimes I see it's getting worse. I'll take the antibiotic, because antibiotic, destroys your whole microbiome. I'm very into health, but I don't want to talk about it now. So, but at the end of the day, the fact that the doctor told me it's a sinus infection, not a brain tumor, I'm already feeling better. Knowing the disease is half of the cure. That's what it says. Understanding the problem is halfway of the solution. If you understand that radical Islam is an issue that we have to talk about, we have to post about, then that's already half the solution. If you say, I woke up one morning with a pain in my head, I don't believe in doctors, so I'm not going to go, then for the next 5 weeks, you're going to be busy saying, maybe I have cancer. You go, you get the diagnosis, and then you see if you want to take medication or you don't, or you do, but you have to know what's wrong with you, first of all. So there is an illness now in the world, a cancer. When you have a cockroach in your house, if you say, I have one cockroach, I'm not going to kill it, I'm not going to do anything. 6 weeks later, you'll have thousands of them, right? Or a mouse. You see a mouse? Oh, poor mouse, let it go. I'm not putting traps, I'm not putting poison. It's one mouse. What happens? A few weeks later, you see 5 and 10 and 20 and 30 and 50, right?
It's worse than that. We have people saying it's a cold night. Let's feed the mouse and give him a place to sleep.
Correct. It's like when you have cancer and you start eating sugar and you say, I'm going to feed the tumor. I'm not going to take any measures to make myself better. Instead, I'm going to feed it. Or you see a mouse in your house, you say, here's a piece of cheese. See a cockroach, you say, oh, what do you like? You like candy? You like mess? Let's make a mess now. When a normal person who owns a house or even rents a place sees a bug, they kill it. They buy some poison, some spray, because they don't want an infestation. When a normal person has pain, they go to the doctor, they find out what it is, and they try to get rid of it. God forbid it's cancer, even worse. But if it's sinus infection, it's much easier, right? But only an idiot, a fool says, I don't care. So I'm sick, who cares? Or I have a mouse, who cares? You have to be a total, not just an idiot, you have to hate yourself. You have to be a narcissist. You have to literally be a narcissist who wants to kill themselves. A suicidal maniac to say that radical Islam is not a problem.
Hey, is that headline true? 250,000 young white girls raped over 20 years in the UK.
Right. So I posted that video.
But I've seen it in a lot of places.
Right, so I posted it. It was I believe Lord Peterson. When someone gets up in the House of Lords in the UK, an English gentleman, he's not saying something that's not verified. There is no way he is coming and talking rubbish. You know, I know, you know, this is verified, and no one is denying it.
It sounds so unbelievable, right? It's like saying, like, what men let other men rape their women, let alone their little girls?
The left.
And you know, there's some crazy story. There was a story that I read where the police went to a house. There were like I don't remember. It was like 10 Muslim men were in there, and there was a young 13-year-old girl in there, and she was drunk, and they were taking advantage of her, and she was arrested for being drunk and underage. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on?
Again, we're coming back to the same thing. The Muslims are using our politeness, our political correctness, our morality to destroy us. They're using our tolerance to take us down. Their biggest weapon is our tolerance.
The most tolerant society. A friend of mine said the most tolerant society, Greg Glassman, will have the most intolerant people in the world there.
Correct. It has to change. If it doesn't change, then a lot of countries are doomed. The problem is, whenever someone tries to speak up, they're shut down. They call them a Nazi. They're not Nazi. They're fighting today's Nazis. You know, you know, everyone labels the right as this and the far right and this right and that right. You know, I'm not saying, you know, obviously there are neo-Nazis and there are anti-Semites and racists on the right and on the left, even worse, and whatever. You have to be very careful. It's very nuanced. It's not so simple. But when a conservative like Trump or you know, or someone in Europe like Geert Wilders or etc., or Marine Le Pen is getting up and saying we have to close our borders, we have to get, you know, we have to start dealing with Islam, we have to start, you know, people that don't want to obey our laws, that people want to destroy our country, they cannot be here anymore. And he is labeled, they're labeled, these politicians are labeled straight away Nazis and far right and Hitler. And no, that's not what they're doing. They are defending Europe from the Nazis, which is the radical Muslims, from the Hitler that's trying to come and take it, you know, take away Europe. It's very scary.
Hey, thank you so much for your time. 90
Right.
minutes blew by. When I first met you, I was like, uh-oh, is this guy going to talk?
Yeah. I was like, what are we going to talk about in 90 minutes? Listen, I just, you know, I'm sure a lot of people listening or who will watch this might get a little, you know, offended or a little bit, you know, uncomfortable. How can a rabbi, a Jewish religious man, ultra-Orthodox man, sit here and talk all this? You know, you yourself a minority, you yourself a religion, you yourself a people that was persecuted, you yourself. It's because of all that I'm talking like this. It's because I'm a Jew whose grandparents were in the Holocaust, whose great-grandparents were butchered and murdered by the Nazis, whose people have been persecuted for thousands of years. It's because of this, you know, that I am getting up as if I've got nothing better to do in my life, and I'm a busy man, and I have way much more to do than post videos on Instagram. I'm not a bored teenager looking for entertainment. I have a life. I have what to do. I'm doing it because there aren't that many voices like me, you know, religious, you know, Jews that are posting about this, and I feel a need. I feel it's important, and I feel it's important for someone like me to sit down and talk like this, because we're doing it for you, the American who watches this. That's, nah, this guy's too radical. You know, what about political correctness? Your children will not have freedom if we don't wake up now. You know, it's only a matter of time before these freedoms that we fought for will be stripped from us. You know.
People get offended by what they choose not to understand. Yeah, they use a lot of dumb words like religion without defining it for themselves. Just jumped on. This guy is right. He's so dead on, and we're so ignorant to this because we're too busy picking genders and fighting over political parties. If we don't wake up and reunite, we're screwed. Good job, Rabs. Thank you, Rabbi. I don't know. Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi.
Thank you.
I hope that was positive too. Hey, buddy. Thank you for coming on. You're always welcome. You have
Yeah.
my WhatsApp if you ever want to chop it up. I'm very curious. I don't like to see people getting hurt. Obviously, I have 3 little Jew boys. I got the Ashkenazi wife. I love everything about what she's taught me, and you guys are good people. Thank you for fighting the good fight for all of us.
Thank you.
All right, have a great day.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye.
ciao.
Bye.
Binyomin. Oh, he's a Scientologist. Oh, you guys were great. Tank, thanks for being here, buddy. Sevon, worst selection of comments to bring up. Dude, you're so confused. You're so confused, Magnus, the way you use the word religion. You're so confused. Hey, you could fix that in an afternoon. Like, you could fix that today. You could fix that today. When people use the word religion like that, like religion is the problem, it's the source of all killing or blah, blah, blah. It's part and parcel with who we are. Every single person has a religion. The people who are scary, Magnus, are the people like you who don't realize you've chosen a religion. It's like you saying oxygen is the cause of all our problems, or being born is the cause of all our problems. Yeah. I mean, it's so ignorant. It's as dumb as when something bad happens and the Christians say, well, God made that happen for reasons. Like, yo, that's everything. There's no insight there. A religion is a sham. I mean, Tank, do you realize how dumb what you're saying is? Just say oxygen is a sham. Being born is a sham. Hey, Tank, it would behoove you more to be like, hey, I think we're just living in a matrix. I think that we're in a simulation. You're saying nothing, dude. You've been duped. You've been duped. You've been duped. Sevon, what is your religion? Savon. Smoke weed every day. That should be a name of a show. Sevon, what is your religion? Sevon, when is your Muslim guest coming on? Oh, you're so clever, Mason. I had my first rabbi on in 4 years. You're so clever. You're so clever. Some of my best friends in town are Muslims. They own all the liquor stores, burrito shops. You're duped by yourself, buddy. The words that you use to think, you keep yourself in a cage, Tank. Keep yourself in a cage. I do want to well, have them on, Sevon. We'll have them on. What about Hindus? Yeah, what about Hindus, Mason? Why Muslims? What about Buddhists? What about them? Tell me. I want to go over and see if Andrew Hiller. I saw some crazy clips of hey, listen, I know you've been triggered. No, you guys have never met a rabbi before. I get it. You're triggered. I get it. You fucking you're jealous. You hate Jews because they're smart and successful and they roll deep. I get it. It's fine. I get it. They're so threatening. They're so threatening. Hey, you should be glad. You should be happy. Tank's like, oh my God, it's so. I love the Muslims who own the weed shops in my town. What are you talking about? They have the cheapest blunt papers.
They'll have more distance to travel at the end. Julia Blazowska last long. And Felix Sobron. Wow, Lindstrom also making light work of this 200-pound sandbag. Michel Ali de la Guardia.
She got a no rep? How the fuck did she get a no rep for that? That shit was deep. There was Sevon isn't turned off by the love of victimhood by his guests. It's crazy that you say that. You guys don't really understand what victimhood is. You know what you sound like when you say that? It's like if I said to you, "Hey, do you remember that time we went to 5 years ago? We went to Denny's and got pancakes, and someone said, 'Hey, dude, I don't talk about the past. I live in the present.'" It's like you just expose yourself that you have no idea what it means to live in the present. You can talk about the past while being present and talking about it. You're like those people who are like, you're like it's like the consciousness of a snail. Your thinking is so primitive. It's wild. It's like people who say, "Hey, there's no evolution. God created us." And it's like, "Hey, why couldn't have God created evolution?" Your thinking is so small. I get it. And most people have trouble with focus and scope. You can't go big picture, small picture, small picture. You're fucked. I get it. But you can work on it. It's like people say, how am I supposed to make plans for next week if I'm supposed to live in the present? You can live in the present. And so when he's telling stories, it's like those idiots who would say to me, "Hey, do you want an apology from Katrin? Why do you keep talking about what she did?" No, I don't want an apology from her. It's just a story. It's just a story. He's just telling the story. He's telling you a true story or not true. You decide what you believe, but you're saying that he's playing the victim. He's not demanding anything. He's not demanding fucking reparations. Talking about slavery in the past and the implications it might have on your heritage, that's not playing victim. Playing victim is using it as an excuse for why you're fucking still stuck and you can't do anything. Or still searching for an apology. They're not fucking doing that. You guys need to learn how to think. Love you guys. I will see you later on today. I think I'm coming back on with hopefully with JR and I think I'm coming back on with JR and John Young and Katrin. Love you guys. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye. And by final thing, the reason why you're saying stuff, when are you gonna have a Muslim on? When are you gonna do this? When are you that? I could school this guy. He's playing the victim. Is because you just don't want to listen to the truth. And I get it. I get it. It's amazing. He's telling a story about a baby that was burned in an oven, and the husband had his dick cut off, and the wife had her tits cut off, and they were forced to watch the baby cook in the oven. And you're saying he's playing the victim. Right. Got it.